Welcome to part 6 of Project Frankaru. Looks like we got some work to do on the transmission mounts and things. So, this is going to be a little bit of handheld this time. Hope I'm not too shaky. Starting with the drive shaft. What I ended up doing was cutting the drive shaft apart, and I'm going to have a one-piece drive shaft. I've removed the old U-joints. They were staked in, so I went ahead and took an end mill, 15/16, and took the staking out of them and took them apart. Turns out this part number is a replacement for the staked in U-joints that has C-clips and can replace those. So I will be able to get a shaft made up with a 51 1/8 center to center on here that will use these U-joints. That way the guys building it can put it back together. So these U-joints replace the staked in ones. You can use a Dremel or whatever to get the old ones out. Leave as much material as possible. And then these will replace those. So that's a good go. The engine and transmission are sitting in the position I want them, and you can see a big gap here between the old mounting point, and this big old mount is hanging way down. As for the shifter, all I didn't bother showing you all this, is take these two tubes that are part of the mounting arrangement, cut them, sleeve them. I've tacked them right now. I'll full weld them. And I took 2 inches out of these to bring everything forward where it all bolts back up to the original locations, since the tranny is back 2 inches. I've tested it, and this is all going to work just fine. I need to tighten up the bushings, but that takes care of the shifter. As for the lower mount, the problem I have here is this really hangs down a lot. This whole thing is hanging really low down here, and I don't like that. So what I want to do is get rid of all this part hanging down. I'm going to cut off the rubber up here and use this upper metal mount. Then I want to make new mounts, and the idea I have is to put bolts in the long way this way using some tubing and some Delrin or nylon bushings that the bolt goes in this way, just like the motor mounts. And that'll allow me to tuck them way up closer to the floor here and get rid of all this hanging down. I should be able to get rid of a good solid 2 inches or more hanging down underneath here. So the next step is to remove this, cut the rubber off, and figure out how all this is going to go together. And that's next step. So rolling along. I'll be back with you when I've got this apart, and you can get a look at what we got to work with. It's tranny mount time, and I'm working on it. I'm using a handheld here because you can't see enough on the tripod to get a good look in here. So this is the beginnings of the mount. There's probably 28 to 32 different ways to do this, but I've decided to pick my one that I'm looking at right now with materials I have and everything here. So here's the deal. I took the original mount here, and it was hanging way down here, and I cut off all the rubber and cleaned it up, and I kept just the top piece of that mount. Then I've taken 2 pieces of 1x1 square tube with 1/8 inch wall, nice thick stuff, and I've paired them together. I welded them to the mount, welded it in the middle, welded the other one to that one, and welded it top and bottom together. So I've got double wall in the center, single wall out here. I made them longer than what I need because I'm going to cut them back. So what I have here then is I have a straight flat cross member. It's still higher than the tranny, but it's a really good place. I could also mount a skid plate from the front if I want to. I can come all the way back here, no problem. Then the next thing I have is I have my tubes here. These tubes are just sitting on top. I can move them in and out, and I got to weld these on. I have bushings to go in the middle of them where the bolts will go through. So I've made those up. Now the idea is that I'm putting these out here, further out, directly under my bolt holes, okay, on each side. So with them directly under the bolt holes, the top plate that's going to mount here with the ears that come down to meet this, an ear on here and here front and back, and a bolt through it. That will give me room to put 3 bolts in instead of 2. Originally they had 2. I moved it back, so I'm going to go ahead and use all 3. I can make a plate here and then the ears, and I can hang it on 3 bolts and spread the load out a little bit. It's only sheet metal. And that brings another point in. If I was to go ahead and move these way in here, and then have my ears up to here, I would be leveraging that down every time. If you don't have a mount that goes all the way across and ties through the center on these, then I would be leveraging those. And since I'm not doing that the original way, I'm going to have separate mounting plates on each side. I want to pull straight down on them, and that's going to give me a better strength on that. So when I get these welded in place, I'm going to cut the ends off, bevel them, and cap them, and then I want to come back and I can actually add little flat pieces to each side of these vertically in the center to just act as reinforcements to hold them together. The weld should be enough, but if I add those little pieces, that'll just make it that much stronger. So what you see right now is the starting point. I'll center these up, mark them, locate them, and weld them in, and then come back and bevel these, and then work on my top mounts. So it's coming along. We're getting there. Kind of it. The cross member is fully welded and ready for paint. The tabs are tacked into place. I'm going to pull them out, full weld them, add some gussets, round all the corners. The drive shaft is down at the drive shaft shop getting made right now. As soon as it comes back, I can test fit it and then take everything apart and start full welding, bracing, and painting everything. And then put the cam in the motor, and we're ready to move on to the next step.